What's up, guys, and welcome back to MoAn Inc. If you guys are new here, then hello! My name is Erica, and it is a pleasure to have you joining me today on the channel. Because for today's video, as you can see from the title, we are going to be getting into historian Polybius. So before we can get into that, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you know every single time I post in the future. And now that you have so kindly joined this nerdy little corner of the internet, let's get into Polybius. Let me start this video with a disclaimer, because there is always somebody lost in the comments. The purpose of this video is to kind of take a step back from the text itself and the nitty-gritty details, give you guys a general overview of what we are going to encounter with the text, how it was received and is received, who Polybius was, as much as we know about him, and all of that kind of stuff, so that way when we get into the text, you know a little bit of background. Because following this, we will be getting into the text and discussing his work and discussing all of those little smaller details, right? That's coming. This is not that. But now that we are all on the same page, let's go. Polybius was born sometime around 200 to 10 BCE and dies sometime around 120 BC. We really do not know these dates, by the way. This is really one of those cases where anytime I say on the channel, I give you dates, take 10 years on either side, and it's probably fine. These specific dates are written differently everywhere. So again, just sort of in that general vicinity, he's born and he dies sometime around 120 BC. Polybius himself is Greek, however, he wrote about Roman history. And in fact, one of the main things that he is pushing for in his text is to educate his reader, now us, about Rome's rise to prominence. But how in the world did we get to this point? How do we have a Greek man suddenly have an interest in Rome and want to tell us why Rome is so great? I am so glad you asked. Polybius has a really interesting story, being from Megalopolis in Greece. I probably butchered that. I am so sorry to all the Greeks, but anywho, that's how you spell it, and here it is on a map. Polybius was actually pretty important when he was in Greece, and he ended up playing an active role in the war with Perseus of Macedonia. However, when they ended up losing, Polybius was taken as one of the thousands of war prisoners back to Rome. Now, this might sound like it's going to be really dark, right? He goes as a war prisoner, he needs to rise above the ashes and escape in order to become this great historian. But as I said, he is a Roman historian despite being Greek. And that's because, technically speaking, when I say technically speaking, I know that historians are going to be like, Erica, you have definitely summarized the bejesus out of this and missed out a lot of detail. Being taken as prisoner was like the best thing that ever happened to Polybius. He ends up becoming the responsibility of a man called Aemilius Paulus, which means that he ends up getting to know Paulus's son, the soon-to-be uber important Scipio, and therefore was really taken into this inner circle of the Roman Republic, which is what Rome was at this time. So he ends up being taken into this inner circle, and he gets to see how the running of the Republic was happening from the inside. Now, it's because of these insights that Polybius ends up writing his histories, which is very pro-Roman, right? So even though he was taken prisoner and this started off as being a very dark story, like I said, it ends up being incredibly bright because he ends up getting into all of these nooks and crannies and getting super high up in society to reap all of the rewards of what Rome was doing. The histories itself spans from 264 BCE to 146 BCE. Though originally the work actually only dealt with the events up to 167 BC. Polybius extended it to 146 BCE because he saw of all of the chaos and drama that was happening and decided that he needed to write that too. Now, what's sad about Polybius's histories is that we know at one point it spanned 40 books. 40. We had 40 chapters. When I say books, I mean chapters. 40 of them were originally written. However, the majority of them do not survive. Such is the way with the ancient world when you study. You know that there were some great big boy books out there, and the things that we have are like, yeah, this is big. It's What we do have from Polybius is books 1 to 5 in their shining original glory. So full on 1 to 5 is everything that he wrote, and then literally everything after that is just like a random extract here and there that we've tried to sort of piece things together, Or, as I say in a lot of these videos, we have other people referencing how many books Polybius wrote, or referencing little dates that Polybius had mentioned, and so on and so forth. So we've been able to figure out exactly how long the book spans by those things, right? So even though we only have books 1 to 5, we know how long it was based on what other people were saying about Polybius and his work. But when it comes to actually what to expect in each book, we've got book 1 and book 2, which is really designed as an introduction to the Roman army. He really explains in detail exactly what's going on there. He explains the crossing into Sicily against the Carthaginians in 264 BCE and includes the events of various other parts of the world. So like what's going on in Greece and all of that kind of stuff during the years 264 and 220 BC. After that, we then go into more modified plans from the Romans and all of that more so technical stuff. So I did just want to let you guys know that when it comes to these histories, they are more so leaning into, again, like with each historian, as I say in every single video, we're getting more close and close. We're getting closer and closer even to our current modern understanding of what history is. So different to Thucydides, Polybius was actually really detail-oriented. Thucydides was pretty much as close as he could be, but due to his circumstance, you guys can watch that video whenever it is that it came out. Polybius is much more detail-oriented. He gets really into the absolute depths of each and every topic. He wants to tell us as much detail as he possibly knows and as he can get his hands on. And so he, kind of the same as Thucydides, is trying to tell a pushed back version of the war. However, obviously, Polybius was in favor of the Romans, and so you do just have to bear that in mind as we read. So closer to history is what we understand, but as we write history in modern times, we try to be as unbiased as possible, and that is still very, very tricky when dealing with the ancient world, and in particular, when dealing with an ancient Roman world that even though they took Polybius, they ended up giving him everything. Now, because Polybius was so high up in Roman society, he uses loads of different sources in order to construct his narrative. So this is where things become different to the previous two, whereas Herodotus and Thucydides were talking to people and were reporting in that kind of a way. We now go into more so somebody who was also reading and also had access to so many confidential reports, including letters and all of those sorts of things that he was also looking at and directly reporting in his work. In saying that, he did also use the idea of like oral reports from people, so interviews and all of those things that the previous two were using. And he says that those are absolutely vital to include, however, shouldn't be the purpose of a historian's task, is just to talk to people and see what they said. That it's a combination of all of these types of sources that'll make the historian's job what it should be. And therefore, Polybius is a pretty solid account. Historians love him. Like modern historians, we love him. Ancient historians also loved him. In particular, I did have to make a note, Dionysius of Halicarnassus was like obsessed with Polybius because he is such a trustworthy guy and he is constantly telling us what his motives are, even though, again, it is very difficult to get unbiased representations of history. But regarding all of the sources that Polybius was using, he gives us a very, very good insight into ancient Rome during this period. Now, as I said at the start of this, Polybius dies sometime around 120, 118 BCE, and very, very little is known about how he died, why he died, when he died, which is obviously frustrating. Now, going through the series, we are just going to be talking about what is handed to us in the copies of the book that when you guys buy Polybius will be there. So when it comes to a lot of the extra stuff, we can go into that separately when we discuss those historians. I mean, they will mention Polybius and so on and so forth, but what we will be discussing is literally what they publish and give to you in a book. You can, however, also buy collections of his fragments from the Loeb or Loeb library. I have realized that we as historians are quite opposite in how we pronounce it. I've always said Loeb, a lot of people say Loeb, but you can buy all of his fragments together in that kind of a way. But what I'm going to be doing is just going through the extant books because that's going to make it easier. And then if you guys want the fragments, we can obviously get to them at a later date and I can start going into them more and more if you guys are interested in Polybius. So it means that this series won't be super long to start with, but I can always add at a later date. You guys can let me know when we get to the end of book 5. If you guys want me to do fragmentary videos, which will just be shorter, then we can absolutely do those. But that's all I have to say about Polybius. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll be seeing you next time with more Polybius here on MoAn Inc. I'll see you guys then.